and welcome everybody. Mental health is a subject we all, whoever we are, still instinctively avoid. At home, in the workplace, amongst friends, we tend to brush it under the carpet, mainly because we fear the unknown. A change of culture has happened with illnesses that have previously been taboo, from cancer to AIDS to other sexually transmitted diseases. But it hasn't yet much happened, as much as it needs to at least, with mental health. Today, we are here to start a conversation around mental and emotional health. Thank you all for joining us at this signpost moment for FLO Hyderabad. Chairperson Ushashree Manni will elaborate further on this. May I request you, Usha, to light the auspicious lamp and then deliver your welcome address.
Esteemed speakers, Ms. Shikha Goel, Dr. Malhotra, Dr. Smita Sharma, Ms. Ushashree, and Ms. Nitya Kanuri, past aides, viewers, and my dear FLO members. Namaste. If you have taken the time to come here today, I'm sure you all feel just like us at FLO, that there is a wide gap between the way mental health and physical health are understood, approached, and even treated personally and professionally. Mental illness is far more common than most of us would like to believe or admit. Each year, 1 in 2 people undergoes some form of mental illness ranging from stress, trauma, anxiety, depression, and more. Since a depressed person's behavior doesn't fit the stereotype, we tend to think that illness is somehow less real or at least less serious. To an outsider, it might seem that a remedy for sadness is happiness and that a depressed person needs to just adopt a more positive outlook. But that is simply not the nature of the illness. FICCI FLO is an organization that is about empowering women at all levels with professional excellence and capacity building. But this is a global, gender-blind problem that needs to be addressed by every government, every organization, every institution, every person at every level. Today, FLO Hyderabad is launching a year-long campaign to raise mental health awareness and spread the message of positive mental health. We are here today to understand what it means to reach out to those who are suffering, and reach out to those who can extend help. Can we have the title video, please? Thank you. I'm very happy that we are supported in the Reach Out campaign by Roshni NGO that is providing free and confidential support for complete psychological well-being through Roshni Helpline and Roshni Counseling Center. Roshni Helpline has been rendering this service for the past 23 years to all age groups of people. Roshni NGO organizes mental health camps every week for the underprivileged, where free psychiatric consultations, counseling, and medicines are dispensed. We are very happy to have Ms. Ushashree, Director, Roshni NGO, as our panelist today. Welcome, Ushashree. Thank you for so willingly agreeing to come on board with FLO on this initiative. We look forward to an effective and meaningful association with Roshni NGO. At FLO Hyderabad, we are constantly guided by our illustrious past chairpersons, used to be invaluable committees. They are with us in this initiative too. as you can see in this video. Can we have the video of Reach Out theme song, please?
If you're living in a house of stone, hidden in the shadows of gloom, waking up to the alarm of a silent weeping soul, remember to reach out. There's always somebody who can help you. Raise your face to the sun again. Nothing but misery for company, and you can't go on no more. Remember to reach out. There's always somebody who can help you walk in life again. If the song inside you is an endless scream, and your days are filled with lonely nights, remember to reach out. There's always somebody who can help you dance to your breath again. Be a lifeline, become the sun, bloom as a rainbow. Be a soft guiding light, and reach out, and reach out. When you feel you've walked 1,000 steps, with nothing but misery for company, and you can't go on no more. Remember to reach out. There's always somebody who can help you walk in life again. Remember to reach out. There's always somebody. Remember to reach out. There's always somebody. Remember to reach out. There's always somebody.
Thank you, pastors, for so sportingly agreeing to be part of this very special video. And thank you, my dear core committee, in supporting this. I would like to especially thank Priya Gazdar, Honorary Secretary, FLO Hyderabad, for the soul-stirring lyrics, her invaluable inputs at all times, and her indomitable spirit in making this dream come true despite all the odds. Cinematographer Ajay Chauhan, who single-handedly wielded the lens zigzagging across the city and beyond for 5 days to capture the shots. Praniti Khanna, Hyderabad's own jazz artist, for the accelerating music score. Thanks to Mahati Velamati for being our co-thinker on this project and her incessant coordination over the last 1.5 months. And also to Shilpa Raju and Kavya Gazdar for their support in this project. With us this evening are illustrious speakers from across the world, literally. Ms. Shikha Goel, Additional Commissioner of Police, Hyderabad City, is a lady of duty who is at the forefront of creating awareness about child sexual abuse, empowering women with initiatives like Women on Wheels, Bharosa, and She Teams, amongst many others. Dr. Sameer Malhotra is the Director of Mental Health and Behavioral Sciences at Max Group of Hospitals, Delhi. He is actively involved in mental health promotion, management of psychiatric and psychosomatic problems, de-addiction, and much more. More importantly, he is respected for being an expert with a human touch. Dr. Smita Sharma, a FLO Hyderabad member, is a leading practitioner of psychology as a lecturer, counselor, and trainer. Her experience ranges across industry and academics. She provides support and advocacy for mental health issues, helping children and adults cope with emotional, physical, and social pressures and changes. A postgraduate in genetics, Ushashree, director at Roshni NGO. Has been associated with the field of mental health counseling for the past 10 years, joining Roshni as a volunteer. After acquiring a PG in psychological counseling, she has risen to this position through sheer commitment. She handles 65 volunteers and 12 experienced psychiatrists and clinical psychologists at the center. Nitya Kanuri is a Yale graduate in MBA and MPH. She has studied and worked in the area of how technology can help people access mental health care. She founded a non-profit, Manamali, that offers online mental health care programs and counseling to students across the BITS Pilani universities. She is currently working on Navi Health, which develops technology for colleges to help students better navigate into mental wellness. Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen. Over to Priya.
Thank you, Usha. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll just take a couple of minutes more to introduce our illustrious panelists a little better and honor them with a token of our gratitude. So, slides please, IT team. Now, I invite Nitya Kanuri to initiate the panel discussion.
Okay. Thank you everyone for having me here and giving me the opportunity to open up this panel discussion. As Priya mentioned, a lot of my background has been in fighting stigma for mental health and driving investment in the space. So I love data and its use in showing the scope and size of a problem. So I'm going to give a little bit of the background on mental health globally and focus on India. So something you all might have heard is that the World Health Organization claims that 1 in 4 people in the world will suffer from a mental illness at some point in their lives. People found this numbering staggering because it means likely someone in your family is suffering or will suffer. The challenge is whether they know they are suffering and whether we know they are suffering is a different question. So if we think about India, for many in India, the suffering is too much to bear. So India accounts for 18% of the world's population, but it accounts for 1/3 of the world's annual female suicides and 1/4 of male suicides, meaning the suicide rate here is much higher than the global average. And suicide is influenced by many factors, including age, gender, geography, culture, and even education. For example, if we take a look at the map on the board, we see that rates of suicide are actually higher in southern and eastern states. This might be unexpected because more developed states with higher education levels actually have higher rates of suicide. We also know that age plays a role as well. We've all seen the mental health epidemics in colleges, and it's only worsening around the world and in India. But as you can see in this graph, it gets particularly challenging for young people. The leading cause of death among Indians aged 15 to 29 is suicide, and roughly 1 young person takes their life every hour. And the reasons for suicide are vast. For men, a common cause is financial challenges and supporting the family. For women, family and marriage-related troubles come to the top. And for the elderly, isolation and health-related disability can play a big role. While suicides highlight those who felt they had no other option, there are significantly more people who might not take their lives, but struggle each day in silence. We lose 135,000 to suicide each year in India, but roughly 10% of India's population, or 135 million, are presently struggling with a common mental disorder, including depression, anxiety, and substance abuse. Unfortunately, only 10% of those people actually get the help they need. So we wonder what's getting in the way of getting help. Several barriers prevent them from getting help, including cost, access, and a challenging one, stigma. So India allocates less than 0.1% of their budget to mental health care. There's also a shortage of professionals. Currently, we have roughly 9,000 psychiatrists in India, meaning there's 1 psychiatrist per 100,000 people. We also know that the average price of a consultation in a metro area can be up to 1,000 rupees, prohibitive for most. And finally, but arguably most dangerously, 70% of Indians still use stigmatizing language to describe mental illness, causing even more people to fear reaching out for help. So I'm grateful we're doing this webinar today and trying to change that narrative. And what does this lead to? We've estimated that we might lose $1 trillion due to untreated mental health illnesses between now and 2030. So it's a massive problem that many should be incentivized to want to address. And all of this has been made worse by COVID, as I imagine we've all seen. Coronavirus has pushed millions of people into isolation. Unemployment is skyrocketing. And research suggests that mental illness cases have increased by 20% since the lockdown began, with anxiety, depression, and suicide on the rise. More so, children who are experiencing isolation and increased rates of domestic violence are at risk for lifelong mental health problems. So how can we begin to change this narrative? Today, we'll hear from 4 experts who bring these diverse perspectives. Dr. Sharma, a counseling psychologist, will bring the perspective of a practitioner and leader in mental health advocacy. Dr. Malhotra, psychiatrist, will bring the medical perspective. Ushashree, director of Roshni, can speak on what it's like to be working on the front lines of public mental health. And finally, Shikha Goel, the commissioner of police, will speak to the intersection of mental health and the police force and how we can bring awareness into our workforces. So with that, I'm thrilled to introduce our speakers and get the Q&A, or get the panel discussion started. So let's dive in. I will start with a question for Dr. Sharma. So Dr. Sharma, you have been closely associated and working in the mental health domain for almost 20 years. What kind of changes or shifts have you witnessed, particularly in India?
Thank you, Nitya, for the question. Before I take the question, I would really like to acknowledge FLO Hyderabad chapter for curating this platform where we can have an open discussion and sharing around this very pivotal and important topic of positive mental health, more so relevant in the present times that we are facing. Coming to your question, Nitya, I would like to share that way back, almost like 22 to 23 years ago, the research work, my doctorate research work topic was need of mental health awareness in India. And after so many years, I'm on this panel and trying to put the same point across. Don't you think that in a certain way that says a lot? As a matter of fact, I would like to say that we all know that mental and physical health are treated very separately, very, very differently. And physical health is what is being given more priority. And this disparity, it comes in different forms and shapes, and that can be very, very obviously seen and experienced in the continuing struggle that mental health domain is facing. To begin with, I would like to talk about the negative societal, or I would rather start with not even societal, the personal, the negative personal and societal stigma and awkwardness that has been attached to mental health for the longest. Moving from here, it comes to the fear, the misconception, the confusion that is connected to mental health domain, which is such an integral part of overall well-being. Evidently, this comes from a place of lack of awareness, lack of appropriate knowledge, and unfortunately that leads to lapses in early intervention, early diagnosis, and appropriate support. Though in a certain way, I can definitely, very confidently, I can say that there has been extensive effort, lot of continuous, stuff is happening in terms of making mental health recognized, perceived, and acknowledged as important as physical health. There have been numerous calls invoking political attention to stressing upon community participation, but we still have a long way to go. Definitely, we still have a long way to go. If all this, what I have shared, is a fact, then I would definitely say that this is also equally a fact that there has been dramatic changes. There has been pivotal shifts in the mental health domain. The major shifts to begin with, though these shifts and changes have been gradual, the speed has been very slow, but they have been there. We have a smaller section of community which has started to open up and talk and discuss about mental health. They have started to know the difference between mental retardation, which is just about intellectual disability, about mental illness, which is about range of conditions that impact a person's mood, thinking, and behavior, to what mental health is, and this is in itself is a huge deal. The other major shift that one can look at and talk about, which has been a very, very sensitive, very crucial, and a very critical initiations that has been witnessed in the sector of education and in the professional setup. Inclusive learning has given a lot of hope to people from my fraternity and people who are struggling in this place. The other area is definitely a lot of people are forthcoming to use technology intervention, and this is largely in terms of internet or big data or cell phone, and this has been of great advantage with respect to primary care. Psychotherapy, the traditional, conventional psychotherapy, has got some kind of an alternate buddy and support from positive psychotherapy, which is a very new initiation, and this has shown its own remarkable results. So definitely there has been a lot of changes at a personal level. If I have to share, I would like to say that I have seen, especially the younger generation has been very, very proactively and mindful in terms of addressing their health conditions and taking timely interventions and support, and that's been of great help to them, and that keeps us in that place of having hope that yes, we are moving forward, we are working towards it, but definitely our pace is slow. We need to fasten up, we need to work out more than what we are doing. And this can also be seen in terms of demand and supply, in terms of ratio between the support staff that is available versus the need in the society. So put together, just hoping that more initiations continue to happen in my fraternity.
Yeah, I think you highlighted some of the challenges in that you're still having the same conversation 20 years later, but it's nice to know of the progress, the increased resources allocated to this, and I'll just say thank you for your persistent continued work. I'll pass it over to Chairperson Ushashree to ask the next question.
My question to Ushashree. Hi Ushashree. We'd like to know, how is Roshni impacting and supporting the mental health care scenario in India?
Thank you, Usha, for the question. I like to thank you as a chairperson for taking this initiative and invited me on this panel. Thank you. So coming to Roshni, the impact of Roshni and all, despair, anxiety, loneliness, and suicide have no geographical boundaries and make no racial distinctions. I can't go on living with things the way they are, is spoken in every language, and tears need translation. Roshni is a voluntary organization that values human life. We have been providing support for the depressed and suicidal for the last 23 years. Roshni is a member of Befrienders Worldwide, an international organization recognized by United Nations. At the national level, we come under the umbrella of Befrienders India, which has 17 in India. And Roshni is the only center for both Telugu-speaking states of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. We reach out to people through our 2 helplines that are open from morning 11 o'clock to night 9 o'clock, all through the week. Our services aren't only but also in-person visits and emails. Our volunteers we have about 70 to 75 volunteers, and some of them are multilingual, and this includes Kannada, Tamil, Malayalam, Punjabi, Marathi, and Gujarati, apart from English, Telugu, and Hindi. This, along with a high Google rating, makes us more visible. Hence, we get calls not just from all over India, but abroad too. We are associated with few reputed organizations. One of them is Live, Love, Laugh Foundation of Deepika Padukone. And the other one is Elder Springs, an initiative by Tata Trust exclusively for senior citizens. So we get calls from these organizations also. We have a tie-up with the Telangana government's lake police. People who jump into the lake to end their lives. I think Hyderabad is know very well about this tank band. This is a place where people take the opportunity to end their lives. So these police rescue them and they complete their formalities and bring them to our center. These people are highly suicidal. We do counseling and if necessary, we advise psychiatric consultation for these people. In association with our sister concern, Roshni Counseling Center, as Ushashree already explained, we organize free mental health camps and provide free counseling, free psychiatric consultations, and dispense psychiatric medicines free of cost. We focus on an integrated approach for total mental health care, and hence we are able to reach out and help a wide spectrum of people. So this integrated approach, if one person approaches us with a problem, and he'll get complete treatment from all, from our Roshni and also from RCC. That's all. Yeah.
Thank you, Ushashree. Lot of information.
Sorry, Usha.
Yeah. So much. Next, I'll ask the question to Dr. Samir. I'm curious what distinguishes a feeling or a symptom from a disorder.
Thank you so much, Nitya, for organizing it and moderating it. And before I answer your question, first of all, I would like to applaud the efforts of FLO Hyderabad to put in this sensitive topic into the right perspective and the right platform that it truly deserves and merits. They've been putting a lot of effort in the field of mental health, and like you said, our fellow panelists are also working hard towards the same. Your specific question about how to differentiate a feeling from a disorder. There are many misconceptions. Like Dr. Smita also referred to, people do not reach the psychiatrist, they don't reach the psychologist because there are many misconceptions. If a person is lying at home, is feeling low, right? They might think that that person is doing it deliberately to avoid responsibility. And at times there are too many advices that start flowing from the family, from friends. And that can be very irritating to the person who's already suffering. It's like a person does not have one leg and you're asking this person to run as fast as a person could. Not that the person doesn't understand what he or she needs to do, but the person is incapacitated to perhaps behave in the manner that is being expected of him or her. Coming to this question of how to differentiate a feeling. Now, we use these terms quite often these days. Even children use this term. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling low. I'm feeling anxious. That doesn't translate immediately into a clinical syndrome. As human beings, we all go through different emotions, and every emotion comes with a reason, comes with a purpose. So not all emotions are bad. Even feeling sad at times is a part of being human, associated with the environmental context that a person is in. Similarly, feeling anxious can be a significant defense for an individual to prevent and escape a threatening situation. So we can't say that these emotions are bad and they should not happen at all to an individual. But how do we differentiate between a feeling and a disorder? I would give a formula of few Ds, which is easier to remember. First would be the duration of that particular feeling or that particular symptom, if I may call it. So if a person is feeling sad for weeks at a stretch, if a person is feeling threatened and insecure for weeks at a stretch, right? Those are symptoms which are important. So duration is important. The first D is duration. The second is distress, the kind of effects that it has on the particular individual in terms of the ability of the person to relate to oneself and perhaps feeling low or anxious or disturbed or unduly threatened. If those feelings persist for a longer period and cause a lot of distress in that individual, it becomes important. The third D is dysfunction. So if it starts affecting your day-to-day routine, it starts affecting the relationship that you share with yourself and the relationship that you share with others, then it is of significance. It may affect your work performance. It may affect the way you take responsibilities. It may affect your interactions in general. It may affect your display of emotions or perhaps the behavior that you engage in. So distress and dysfunction are important Ds. The other D is danger, like the NGO director just spoke about, Roshni, where people are brought with suicidal thoughts or perhaps suicidal behavior. So if you are becoming a threat to your own self, or you're becoming a threat to the environment or the society at large, you're becoming violent, you're becoming aggressive, either towards yourself or towards others, or you are engaging in any self-harming behavior, then that also becomes quite important. Disharmony. So disharmony is the next D, wherein the disharmony is between yourself and others in the environment. You are not at peace with yourself. You're not at peace with the environment. So these Ds are very, very important. The other issue would be some extraordinary experiences where you start feeling threatened, you start feeling insecure, or you start having certain perceptions which are out of the ordinary experience of life. So for example, if a person starts hearing voices or starts feeling as if he or she is being controlled by some outside force, some agency, through some technology, if the person starts hearing voices of people discussing about him or her, those are things which become important. And I left one D, and that is drugs of abuse. So if a person is into too many substances or and starts taking a particular substance in excess, many times they use it as a coping strategy. It begins as a coping strategy, but this is a maladaptive coping mechanism because it leads you to the next D of danger. So if you remember these Ds of distress, disharmony, dysfunction, long duration of symptoms carrying on, significant threat to yourself or to others, which is dangerous, I think it calls for immediate attention, because this is something which is very important. And mind is not just restricted to what we think or what we emote or what we behave as. It also has strong links with our body. And these days, it's very difficult to dissect mind out of the body. Mind is a function of the brain. Brain is a structural aspect of the body. So this whole realm of neuropsychology, neuropsychiatry, psychosomatic medicine talks about these linkages. And these linkages are through the language of neurochemicals, through the language of hormones, and through the language of immunity. So this is very, very important to understand, that people with anxiety or anxiety-related or stress-related disorders could also present with physical manifestations. People may have undue vomiting, uncontrollable vomiting and hiccups. People may have irritable bowel symptoms where they have to rush to the washroom every now and then. People may have urticarias or skin lesions which go undiagnosed, undetected. They are not able to understand why this is happening. And all this could have underlying stress and underlying neurochemical disturbance in the system, which reflects in different forms. Persistent headaches, fluctuations in blood pressure despite being on BP medicines, sugar elevation despite being on medication could also be attributed to underlying stress. So all these need to be remembered, and we need to be sensitive to be able to prevent and timely intervene. And we must destigmatize these problems, because anyone, and I tell you, Nitya, as you rightly pointed out in your slides, anyone, any family could be affected. When you say 1 in 4, if you take an average family size of 4, it is a problem of every family. It's high time we stop making fun of it. It's high time we do not enter into unnecessary arguments with the individual who's suffering. It's high time that we lend a patient listening and ear to the person. Hearing out, listening helps a great deal, and its timely intervention is something which is very, very important. There are many myths that surround psychiatric medication and therapy and counseling, and I'm sure with the flow of this discussion, we would be discussing those aspects as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samir, for the 5 Ds: duration, distress, dysfunction, danger, disharmony, and drugs of abuse. Easy to remember. I wanted to ask one quick follow-up question based on what you just shared. This notion of reaching out early, of not letting things, be pushed under the rug. And I'm wondering, as friends, parents, teachers, is there one question you recommend asking someone who is first exhibiting a worrisome symptom, such that you don't have to wait for a long duration before you early intervene?
I think even before asking questions, we have to be more observant. Many things are reflected in the body language, in the behavioral symptoms. If the person is not looking into the eyes, if the person is isolating oneself, if you feel there's a change in the person's behavior, please give your time to that individual. Listen to that person, what the person has to speak about. Many times, this fear of being judged, the fear of being given undue advices can put people in that spot where they don't want to reach out. They don't want to discuss their problems. They are skeptical that they might become a laughing stock, or people might just kind of think that they are weak. It's not being weak-willed. They need to speak out at that point of time without this fear of being judged, without unnecessary reactions and unnecessary judgments coming from the other end. So more than asking questions, I think, lend a ear. Try to listen out to whatever the person has to speak, and encourage a healthy environment, and make sure that the person gets that little ventilation and this little cathartic support at that point of time. A helping hand, maybe a friend, it could be a close family, individual, or it could be a counselor or a doctor who needs to be consulted at that point of time. And this confidentiality, comfort, non-judgmental approach really helps.
Thank you. As our title shows, there's always someone. So sounds like observe and lend your ear in time. Thank you. Next, I'd love to move to Mrs. Goel and ask about the proportion of domestic violence cases being reported and whether they've gone up over time. Curious to know how they're dealt with and whether male victims are coming forward.
Thank you, Nitya, for your question. And first of all, I would like to congratulate Flo for taking up this initiative of asking people to come out of the closet and reach out, because this is the need of the hour. So definitely, this is a very, very good initiative which has been taken up. Coming to your question about domestic violence, we see an annual increase of about 12 to 15% in the number of cases which get reported to us in domestic violence. But I would say that this does not actually reflect that there is an increase in domestic violence, but the fact remains that more than 77%, I am told, women never even report to anybody that they are facing any violence. So as a prosecuting agency, when we see an increase in reporting to us, we feel encouraged, because we have been taking up campaigns to encourage women to come out and report if they are suffering. And therefore, we are not looking at this statistics as an increase in crime in a particular time, but we are looking that, yes, women are becoming a little more aware and they are coming out and telling about this issue. In the beginning, usually what used to happen is that any victim who was suffering from this, they had to go to the police station, where they were heard by the police station staff. Some kind of counseling by the police itself used to take place, and then if either they reconciled or they had a case booked and all that kind of thing. Next step was establishing women police stations who also were doing a similar kind of job. But we realized that as police personnel, we are not trained in actually counseling people. So there is where we felt the need, one, to tie up with certain agencies, NGOs, Roshni being one of them. Our women police stations presently have a tie-up with Roshni, so the victims go there. And the other was in 2016 when we established a Bharosa Center of our own, which has trained counselors. And any time when the victims, anybody who reports of a domestic violence to Hyderabad City Police, they go to the Bharosa Center. And there at the Bharosa Center, the trained counselor, they analyze the trigger points, what are the root causes for the domestic violence happening, and then on that basis, analyze even the mental health condition of the women victim and the spouse or others who are the cause of this. And based on that, the further counseling or experts and all is taken up. We've seen that as far as the cases which come to us, about 40 to 50% of cases of domestic violence are a result of alcoholism. And therefore, we do have trained experts who help in, counseling for de-addiction. We also send cases to de-addiction camps if they require such. What we do in what our experience has been that after the setting up of Bharosa, we've been able to bring about reconciliation in almost 45% of the cases which come to us. And in about 10% of such cases, there is again a second time a complaint comes to us. But we've seen that the trigger points or the root causes in the second time when it comes are different. Now that we also have tie-up with Roshni for the police station. So then if they go to the women police station, then they are tied up with the Roshni, or otherwise we do at the Bharosa Center. So right now, our approach as an Indian society has been first to try to reconcile wherever possible. But definitely the bottom line is that we first go by the choice of the victim, because there are times when a victim comes and is very certain that they do not want any reconciliation, and therefore there would need legal action to be taken. And there is where we provide the legal support by way of either booking the cases in the police station if it is required, or sending it to the DV authorities. Where there are times when we analyze a case, and although the victim may not be so willing to book a case because of plethora of reasons which happen in an Indian society, but we feel that the suffering or the domestic violence or the attitude of the other party is such that there is no scope of reconciliation. We try our best to support the women with all the legal help, and to see that she goes and takes action. But yes, as I said, 45% we have been able to reconcile, and just 10% of them again come back. So we do feel encouraged by the fact that the center has been able to bring the families together and provide support. And what we also do as a follow-up, that each and every case which gets reconciled, we follow it up for at least 2-year period, where repeatedly every month or something we call, we either make a telephone call or if required call them and see that things are going well between them. So this is what has been our approach as of now while handling the cases of domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Goel. It's really heartening to hear the increase in calls coming in and framing that as a reduction in stigma and a willingness to feeling like you're able to reach out. It's also great to hear of the collaboration between groups like yours and Roshni. Much of the research on state-by-state mental health prevalence will speak to these inter-community ties as one of the biggest contributors to reducing the crisis. So thank you. Next, I would love to take things back to Dr. Sharma. And I'm wondering, this might be relevant for this community, what can we do at an individual and community level to promote positive mental health?
That's a good question. I'll be so happy to answer to this. To begin with, I would say that we tend to wonder like why some people, they buckle down whenever there is a crisis. And on the other hand, we definitely see people who bounce back with resilience in spite of the challenges or the crisis or the negative experience that face them in reality. So positive psychology, which is a subset of psychology, this has come up with a very, very amazing, beautiful 5-element preventive skill building model. And positive psychology largely studied, explained, and extended its learnings with respect to resilience, hope, grit, empathy. And all these elements have been learned in forms of skills. So to begin with, the first is positive emotion. So it's termed as PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. So this can be a very strong and meaningful take back because it has a scientific basis, it has research basis to it. The first being positive emotions. So creating positive emotions in terms of filling your day and life mindfully, very consciously with respect to the kind of people that you wish to surround yourself with, in terms of the music you want to hear, the kind of food you want to eat, anything that warms your heart and brings a smile on your face. Try to make sure that you are consciously savoring constructive and positive emotions and experiences in your life, rather than rushing from one positive experience and trying to finish that up and move to the next one. And this has been proven that very evidently, this leads to building of empathy, not only for others, but for one's own self too. The second being positive engagement. Positive engagement is all about finding through your skills what is so meaningful and so engaging for you that takes you to a place of complete flow and engagement, where you lose touch with time and what's happening around you. You get completely submerged and soaked into something like this. On this, I would also like to add that we have been conditioned very largely in terms to focus on the outcome. We have conditioned to look at, the results. But there has been rarely efforts made in terms to acknowledge, appreciate, not the outcomes, but the efforts. So make mindful initiations in terms to draw your attention equally or rather more on efforts versus just the outcomes. And again, scientific researchers have proven that this leads to build resilience in an individual. The third being positive relationships. Since school days, we have been taught, time and again, that man is a social animal. So we humans, we have been built to bond, to connect. So it's very essential. Nobody has taught us this, but we have observed that people always say that it's very important to have relationships. But it's equally important to invest in building skills so that you can have more, stronger, deep, meaningful relationships in life. They act as a strong foundation in your life. Building strong relationship also helps you to regulate your emotions. So as Dr. Sameer was saying, it's very, very essential to a core to move from hearing and reacting to listening and responding to situations. The next positive emotions, positive engagement, and positive relationship is positive meaning in life. Again, through conditioning, we've always, when we look at meaning, it comes to our forefront that it's something around our professional work or something around our personal work. But when I'm talking about positive meaning, it's largely coming from a place of having a bigger and more important purpose in life, which is not only sufficing your happiness, it's beyond that, where you are trying to make some kind of a substantial contribution to bring added value in somebody's life, right? So it's we always pay it forward is something, which is very common, like an random act of kindness. And instead of someone coming and acknowledging and appreciating that, and you say that, please forward it in your own simple capacity, whatever way that you can. And the fifth one being positive accomplishment. Very crucial, very important. This is in terms of not how it sounds, but it's coming from a place that it's very crucial, again, that we develop a sense of mastery in something. It gives a sense of togetherness and reassurance to know that I'm good at something in life. It helps you to stay, afloat in the most challenging times of your life. With respect to accomplishment, again, because we are so driven with, whether it's our personal lives, whether it's our professional lives, or, the societal engagements that we get absorbed in, that we miss on the part of celebrating our accomplishments. And we always look at accomplishment in terms of, the badges that we get or the awards that gets bestowed on us. But it's on a day-to-day basis where one experiences that one has actually stretched one's boundaries and stepped out and done something which is making one feel really wonderful from within. So we don't have to wait for others to pat on our back, within your own being, within your own space. Make sure you appreciate mindfully, you pause for a minute and say, good job done. So these are those 5 elements which are very, very essential and which can act as an enabler in terms of building emotional immunity. We have always been tuned to, and more so now with the COVID thing happening, that we are making sure that every day we are taking our multivitamins, we are taking warm water, turmeric milk, all of that. Definitely it's enabling us physically. But are we mindful and conscious as to what we are doing pertaining to our emotional immunity? What are we doing? As much as our physical self is getting restricted because of the condition that we are all living in, equally we are getting suffocated and consumed in terms of our emotions also. So these elements can be of great use at this time. Beside this, what I would also like to talk about in terms of like accept it, your journey of emotional well-being and positive health starts from, staying true to mindfully let your emotions be your guide, let your feelings be your guide. Be mindfully attuned to them, how you are feeling, what you are thinking, what kind of negative thoughts that you are getting stuck with. Accept them, acknowledge them, talk about it, share stories. Building compassion around people who come forth and they talk about their concern, very, very essential. Then equally important is exerting your right to seek support. Like, for the simplest of things, we are absolutely okay to step up and to reach out to our loved ones to talk about our discomfort pertaining to our physical concern. But when it comes to emotional thing, either, I've heard things from my clients in terms of, time will take care of this. Let me wait and watch. So we wait for some divine intervention or magic to happen to, put our emotions back into the place which will help us to have a sustainable, productive life. But over here also a sense of ownership, a sense of responsibility needs to be built in, to take charge and to move in this direction of one's own and one's loved one's emotional well-being. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma, for that wonderful overview of the field and practice of positive mental health. I know I can say I used to be someone that thought mental health was, finding my problems and my faults and fixing them. But the shift of finding what feels right to you and highlighting and amplifying the positive has been helpful for me. So with that, I wanted to ask one quick follow-up. If someone on this call wanted to, leave in, 30 minutes and start cultivating these positive mental health skills you mentioned of positive emotion, emotional regulation, empathy, what is one action or practice you recommend? What is your prescription?
For the immediate, the first step forward?
Yeah, just one practice for someone who's like, yes, this resonated, I want to start.
Okay, so it works as a combination. See, one thing in entity, so the first step could definitely be acknowledging and accepting there is a concern, and look at all these 5 things and what resonates most for you. For someone, building on a relationship could be a taxing and consuming thing. That person can take charge to build his or her own positive emotions in a certain way because he is or she is going to be the sole operator in that place. So somebody can start from building on positive emotion. The others can take charge because if you are staying in isolation, keeping COVID-19 in perspective, trying to figure out with respect to the strength one has, the abilities, the talents one has, that what kind of a work I can involve and get, align myself to, which gives me a sense of wholeness and completeness. Moving on, this is a time when though there is a lot of social and physical distancing, but definitely we can create a sense of purpose and meaning in our life in terms of reaching out through multiple social medias. The next being on positive accomplishment, acknowledging one's own accomplishment and acknowledging others can be a good way to move forward for the others too. So to each its own is what I'm just trying to pass on a message about. Yeah.
That sounds like find your fit and maybe journal
Yes,
about what is. Thank you so much.
What works well for you.
Yes. My next question is for you, Ushashree. And I'm wondering, I want to learn more about Roshni over time. So what programs does Roshni use to reach out to people? Have you seen volume increase over time? Have the types of calls changed? Would love to hear more about your work.
Thank you, Nitya, for the question. I thank Dr. Samir Malhotra for explaining the importance of listening in his conversation. Thank you, Doctor. That's what our main focus is, just a non-judgmental listening we focus on. And I thank Dr. Smita. She gave very good inputs regarding 5 positives, how to develop emotional immunity for an emotional well-being. We all put all this together in our, when we befriend our callers, visitors, or through emails. So, a part of this is done by our extensive awareness and outreach programs. And we do these programs throughout the year. We reach out to various institutions and organizations with 2 purposes. One is to create awareness about the warning signs of any mental health problems, especially depression and suicidal ideation. If we create awareness among the general public about the signs and symptoms of either depression or any anxiety disorders for that matter, so that goes a long way in seeking for, it helps people to seek help. And the other purpose is to empower people to talk about mental health issues without any stigma and reach out for help. So I request the IT team of FLO to show some slides at this juncture. We go on a regular basis to Cherlapalli prison to befriend under trials. It is the first experience for all those people. First time they are in the jail, they go through a lot of emotional trauma. So we go twice in a month and befriend these under trials. This is an ongoing process for the past 4 or 5 years. Next slide. And we on 10th September, that is World Suicide Prevention Day every year, we go on a massive awareness programs. This was at Necklace Road. No, sorry, this was, And we train, this was at Public Gardens, and where Mr. Shikha Goel was our chief guest. And this slide, we train police personnel also. They go through a lot of pressure, both from work pressure and also during their working hours, irregular timings and all that. So we train them how to address themselves, what they are going through, whether they need help and how to seek help. This is one, and this was at a Necklace Road, where we, on the 10th September 2018, we created awareness to the general public. We had a candlelight whistle. Next slide. These are some of the educational institutions we go to, and then, it has to start at school level. If we can inculcate the importance of emotional fitness to the students, I think that goes a long way in their lives. It is equally important like a physical fitness. You should be emotionally strong. Go to schools, colleges, and other educational institutions. Next slide, please. This is also another school. Our Roshni team was invited to the program called Milo Everkotiswardu. I think all of you are familiar with who follow Telugu language. And this actor Akkineni Nagarjuna, he has taken time on his popular TV show MBK and spoke about Roshni services. After this program, we had our helplines ringing 24/7 for the next few months. This effective awareness is what we need. Thank you for showing the slides, please. We use various social media platforms also to spread this, spread the word. And we also go to hospitals and 2 palliative care facilities we visit. One is Sparsh Hospice and the other one is Kumudini Devi Palliative Care Center. This program was initiated in association with the Roshni Counseling Center. Panel discussions, seminars, presentations, and public lectures to increase awareness of our services among the public. And TV scrolls about Roshni services allows us to reach out to depressed and suicidal people in the remote districts and in rural areas. We have special programs on 10th September every year on World Suicide Prevention Day. Coming to corporates, we conduct sessions related to stress management, depression, and suicidal ideation. Not too long ago, the business world was in for a rude shock on hearing about the suicide of V.G. Siddharth, founder of Cafe Coffee Day. In the lap of luxury, a business magnate who fondly said, "A lot can happen over coffee." How ironic was the statement? He couldn't find a single person to vent his pain, fears, and anxiety. He found himself isolated and lonely. Not want to seek and find support. Was it stigma attached to depression? The fact that he was mentally weak? That would tarnish his public image? But through these overwhelming situations, for various reasons, to come forward and seek help. One cannot cope alone. Help is always available. It is the person who is going through this emotional distress should seek help. He has to take responsibility for his life. Reach out for help. Help that is confidential, comfort of anonymity, and being non-judgmental. This is what Roshni provides. It doesn't end the pain. It just passes it on to someone else. Roshni's endeavor to reach out to the public. So, we always emphasize all these awareness programs focus only on creating awareness. Reach out. There is help available. That initiative one has to take for their own well-being. I thank FLO Hyderabad chapter chairperson Ushashree and her team for taking this issue as one of their programs. For asking me this question, and I could reach out to many people because of this panel, and I request whoever is watching this program, you're all ambassadors. It's mental health. Please spread the word, and speak up. Each person should develop, knowledge about mental health for his own well-being, and also speak up wherever there is an opportunity to speak and spread the word. I request all these ambassadors to spread the word about positive mental health. And we are all human beings. We all go through ups and downs. It doesn't mean that we need to end our lives. It's a process of life. When you can't cope alone, please seek help. And not only seeking help for yourself, you also ask others whether they are feeling the same way, and give them help. Take them to a helpline like Roshni, or there are psychologists, psychiatrists who can give timely help. Timely help is the essence of saving one's life. I request all of you, please spread the word. I hope this goes a long way among the general public because of our collaboration with Hyderabad chapter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ushashree. It's so wonderful to see the diversity of programs that you run, embedded in the community, the workforce, as well as offering remote support on the helpline. I think it's this multi-pronged approach that ensures access to mental health care for all types of people. So thank you so much for your work. Now I'll pass it over to Chairperson Ushashree.
Thank you, Nitya. Yeah, my question to Shikha Goel ji. Shikha ji, Lake Police has rescued numerous precious lives. What are the post-suicide prevention services or activities undertaken by them?
In fact, part of it was answered by the Roshni itself, because we have a link with Roshni as far as the Lake Police is concerned. But just to first elaborate about what Lake Police is all about, as you're all aware, I mean, most of the people who live in Hyderabad is that we have this in the middle of Hyderabad, the big lake. And unfortunately, it also becomes a favorite place for people to go and commit suicide. And therefore, the Hyderabad police took an initiative, and a special Lake Police police station was established at that place. And what we have is that almost at every 500 meters around the lake, we have somebody deployed. And each of this officer who's deployed is knows basic swimming. We have an expert available round the clock to rescue people if they have jumped into the lake. And we are very satisfied with the fact that in the last 3 years, we have saved lives of 1,258 people in this one particular place itself. Now, coming to the next part of what we do after we rescue the people. So that is where we are in touch, or we have a tie-up with Roshni and others, psychiatric and other help which is required. What we've seen in the cases which will come to us is that almost, the large percentage of people, large percentage is more women who are coming to commit suicide, if we go by numbers. And in that, when we see the reason by which women are coming, we see more than 70% of them are coming because of some marital or a family dispute, which is the major reason for which they go and try to end their lives. And for them, now that we have a Bharosa Center, we link these women to the Bharosa Center. And as I already explained when we were talking about the DV cases, so these somehow come into that category of a family or a marital dispute or something. So then the Bharosa Center starts taking care of these women. The other person, then when we look at men, the major reason for them is usually financial or economic hardships, business failures and all, for which they end up dying. Youngsters, which a few, not many, are the ones which basically fail their exams and all. And what we do is that depending on the requirement, we then, as Roshni was as we already discussed, they come in and step in and then take in these people for professional help, so that we do not have a repeated incident. I mean, we are very proud of the fact that in the last 3 years, there has only been a single person whose life we could not save after he was rescued, and we had a second attempt and ended up his life not at Hussain Sagar but at his residence. So we believe that this, and every month there is a follow-up happening, wherein our own police station level, the officers call up the victims who have been rescued and find out from them their well-being. They are where there are financial hardships, we do call up other parties. People, somebody's not able to pay a loan or something, we try to call the other parties and try to bring in a sort of buy time for them, see that that immediate triggers which are coming, which are leading to these tendencies, are mitigated, and also psychological, psychiatric help wherever required is then taken up. So this in nutshell is what we have been doing in the Lake Police, with the association with other agencies, Roshni being the very big partner with us in that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shikha ji. Over to you, Nitya.
So much. So for the final question of our panel, before we dive into the Q&A, it's for you, Dr. Samir. And I'm wondering if you could speak to the different types of psychiatric disorders, and specifically, how can one manage that type?
I think you've raised a very pertinent, important question, how to recognize and what is the diversity. It's a huge range. It's like an ocean, right? What we see is the tip of the iceberg in terms of behavior and emotions displayed by the individual, which may percolate in terms of relationship issues, disharmony to a level that a person feels like ending up one's life. That is something that we see at the superficial platform. But what's happening deep within could be different realm of disorders. And I'll give you a little glimpse into those disorders. When we talk about clinical depression is a syndrome. When we say syndrome, it's a cluster of different symptoms, wherein for at least 2 weeks at a stretch, the person is feeling persistently low in mood. And even if you're not feeling sad, you start losing interest in activities which are pleasurable. So we call this term anhedonia, where you start losing pleasure in activities which are otherwise interesting to you or were pleasurable to you. The third is easy fatigability. So people remain tired, they feel easily fatigued. Those are the kind of symptoms, if they are persistent for 2 weeks and beyond, it raises an eye of suspicion that the person might be suffering from a clinical syndrome of depression which needs correction. What is known biologically is that the person is running low in terms of serotonin levels in the brain. Serotonin is a neurochemical, it goes low because of fast destruction, and such people at times start having negative view about self. So they start feeling worthless. They have negative view about the world, so they start feeling helpless, and they also have negative view about the future, and that's the most difficult part. People can struggle through current situation. People can struggle through current stress. What becomes more important is perhaps when you start feeling that there's no hope left in future. You always have this thought in the back of the head that tomorrow would be better, but the moment you start losing hope, you start losing faith, is the time when it becomes alarming and something ought to be done there and then. Similarly, other symptoms of depression would include significant disturbances in sleep, significant disturbance in appetite. Many times people are just struggling with their sleep, and the worst thing to do is to just buy certain medicines to fall asleep. That doesn't help much, because what you're doing is just correct the surface. And those medicines which are taken by them, although it should not be made available and at times is not made available also, but somehow they procure it to kind of fall asleep, they are not addressing the core issue of low serotonin, which needs to be addressed clinically and biologically as well. So if these are the symptoms present in an individual and the person feels guilty all the time, and you victimize yourself in thoughts, like Dr. Smita rightly pointed out, she's talked about positive psychology. What happens is many a times it's not the environment which is that stressful, or even if you've been through a significant stress in the environment, it was a one-time stress. But what you've done to yourself is self-victimization through a significant negative thought process over a period of time. What we call as negative cognitive distortions. Now, those negative cognitive distortions could mean minimizing the positives and the abilities within you. It could mean magnifying the situation again and again. And with that kind of a self-victimization mode, you forget to give the positive nourishment to your mind through faith, through hope, through optimism, through gratitude. So depression, I've given you certain symptoms which are clinical and need to be addressed in time. Many times people become very slow in their activities, or there might be agitation alongside. And yes, if you have suicidal thought processes, there's no way, you should immediately consult a good counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. And I tell you, the person always tries to reach out at that point of time. It becomes very important for the first point of contact to be sensitive enough to have that time and little patience in hand. That sensible, sensitive, confidential approach of listening and reaching out to that person and holding the hand and say, fine, I'm there. Your life is precious. You're not alone. It's a difficult phase you're going through, but this too shall pass. You need those reassurances, not just through words, but also through body language. And if that point, whether it is the police, whether it is an organization where the person is working, whether it is a social organization that a person has contacted, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, please make sure that the approach is sensible, sensitive, and you have the time and you make the person realize the value and meaning of that person's life, and that is valuable to you. That person is valuable. His or her time is valuable to you. Giving that patient listening helps a lot. Coming to the other realm is of obsessive compulsive disorders. where people tend to engage in intrusive thoughts. They are repetitive intrusive thoughts which come to the mind. The person knows they are their own. They want to get rid of them. They are not able to. So many times the surface complaints would be, I'm not able to sleep. And when I ask such patients, why are you not able to sleep? Is it some kind of a thought or a loop of thoughts that you get into? The answer is usually yes. There is a negative loop of thought. I know it's not good for me, but I cannot correct it. I cannot get rid of it. It's constantly knocking my door, just like an intrusive, unwanted guest. And that leads to a lot of dysfunction. That leads to a lot of distress. And many times to undo those negative thoughts, those negative thoughts could be imagining some sexual activity while you are engaging in a religious work or a religious activity. That could be about cleanliness, so you keep on washing your hands. Now, current COVID times, particularly people with anxious bent of mind or the ones with some obsessive streak, either in their personality or in terms of the illness that they are going through, they tend to spend a lot of time washing their hands. You don't need to spend hours washing your hands. And they start using detergents, they start using such chemicals which are not good for your hands. So that is something that a person of OCD would get into. OCD meaning obsessive compulsive disorder. So there's a compulsive element to you. To undo that, you start repeating things again and again, whether it's checking your doorknobs again and again, because there's lingering doubt is there in your head that I hope I have locked it properly or not. At times it is about reading the same article again and again, the same phrase again and again while you are studying, because you're not able to focus that well. And at times it also leads on to procrastination, because many of the priorities of your life, they become neglected. You're not able to give that time and that precedence to those because you are engaged in those rituals of either counting or imagining something compulsively or behaving repeatedly in a particular domain or direction, whether it's washing your hands or cleaning again and again and again. So that perhaps becomes a disorder which needs treatment. Again, significant low levels of serotonin are associated with it. When we are talking about suicide and suicidal behavior, again, extremely low levels of serotonin have been seen in the brain, particularly in the limbic system, which is our emotional area of the brain. The other disorders that we see include psychotic disorders. And psychotic disorders would mean you start having certain experiences which are not based on the ordinary life experiences. So you start becoming deluded. You become suspicious. You start losing trust and faith. When you start losing these positive emotions, these positive feelings, you become all the more insecure. When you feel insecure, you also are at the same time experiencing certain voices in your head. You are able to hear certain things which others are not able to hear. And you feel at times that your emotions, your behavior, your interactions are now being controlled and governed by an external agency against your own wish. So you become like a puppet. And the boundary, Nitya, we feel that there's a boundary between ourselves and others. Whether it comes to a thought, there's some censorship there. Whether it comes to what we speak, there's some censorship there. But when you feel you've become a puppet and there's nothing which is in your control or you could censor, you feel vulnerable. You feel even if you're thinking something, those thoughts are being spoken aloud, and perhaps people sitting far off, say hundreds of kilometers away, are also able to hear and see what exactly I'm going through. I've seen patients who at times while taking bath would wear a complete sari or the complete clothing, fearing that they are being watched by outsiders. And if I would ask them, where would the outsider be? They would say he was sitting maybe in America and he's perhaps being able to watch me in India. How is it possible? So that's the kind of mindset that the person develops. So they run into those bizarre thought processes. At times they feel insecure and they are driven to a point where they feel like committing suicide, or they hear certain voices which command them to commit suicide. Now those kind of things need not be, need to be addressed immediately at that point of time, because when we talk about a neurochemical flow, dopamine goes high in certain areas of the brain. This neurochemical is important for all of us. We all have dopamine. It gives us zeal, it gives us energy, it gives us focus. But if this dopamine goes high, it's like our antennas are raised. We become insecure. We become threatened. Many a times people start feeling as if a person's husband or the wife, the spouse, is into multiple relationships. So delusions of infidelity may be happening, whereas that may not be correct. And that can lead to marital disharmony. And that marital disharmony can percolate into domestic violence. So look at the ramifications. Whereas the problem there could be a delusional disorder or delusion of infidelity, which can be corrected in a timely manner. Identifying them in time is very important. The other kind of disorders that we also see include dementia, particularly in elderly population. And you know what happens? Maybe the daughter-in-law or the son would come and say, you know, my father or father-in-law or the mother or mother-in-law, they have started, you know, kind of speaking lies. You know, they're properly fed. We attend to them quite well. In the morning, I give them breakfast. It's a sumptuous breakfast. But soon after half an hour or 1 hour, they say, you have not given me the breakfast. So that leads to bickering in the family, not realizing that the man or the woman in question is becoming forgetful. And when you become forgetful, you know, the family starts questioning and they say, oh, you remember things of the past. You remember 10 years ago, you had a cup of coffee with your friend who had come all the way from different city and we entertained, and you remember all those things. How the hell can you forget what you had for breakfast? Because when we talk about dementia, what you lose in memory, initial stage, is recent memory, not the events of the past. You still remember your childhood friends, you still are able to relate to people in the albums of the past, but you're not able to remember what you ate for your breakfast or what you ate for your lunch that particular day. So if those are the symptoms happening, you feel as if you're caught in an environment where at times you're not able to recognize your family, you can lose your way, you might just kind of feel alone and isolated, and that can also lead to self-harming behaviors or agitation. So those are emotional and behavioral ramifications of something biological. And what is happening in the brain? The brain is shrinking in size when we talk about dementia. There are treatments available. We cannot undo it, but we can delay the progress of the illness. We can improve the emotional and behavioral component of symptoms to make life more dignified and positive for the individual by adding quality and meaning to that person's life. Other set of disorders include bipolar affective disorder. The name in itself, bipolar, there are two poles to the illness. One is depression. So there are times when you go through a phase of depression, like I explained. There's another phase where you go into a high phase. A high phase would mean you start spending in excess. You are over talkative. You are aggressive. You start driving very fast. Accidents on the road. You start drinking in excess during those phases, although you're not otherwise a regular alcoholic. Now, those are things which we need to also understand. And many times that leads to rift in family, that leads to rift in relationships, that leads to rift within organizations. And people can then end up spending insane amount of money on things which they need not buy and are absolutely redundant and not required. So those are things where I've also come across patients, for the first time they reach us and they've already sold their properties at dearth prices, not realizing the vulnerability that they are going through. There are people who are in top-notch positions, they sign their resignations without realizing what they are going through. There are people who would take their elderly parents for a car ride to the Himalayas at 150 or 200 km/h speed in winter, peak winters, not realizing what the family is going through. So this is something which is a manic-like episode which needs correction. Again, high levels of dopamine, high levels of norepinephrine in the brain can be responsible for it. Timely intervention, timely treatment is important. And I must say one more thing here, that more than treating there and then, we also need to emphasize the need to maintain them on regular treatment, regular follow-ups, because many a times we cannot uproot these problems. Just like blood pressure, just like sugar, many a times we cannot uproot. You know, there are medicines for diabetes, there are medicines for blood pressure. Similarly, there are medicines for these ailments also. We should not shy away. And there are many myths associated with medicines. People think there are steroids. We never use steroids in psychiatry by and large. Rather, most of the time, psychiatrists advocate against use of steroids by other disciplines, because many times steroids can predispose you towards manic-like episode or psychotic episodes. So that is something that we are very careful about. Two, they are used judiciously, following international standard guidelines. So they need to be followed, and people do follow them. Psychiatrists working in the field do follow it. So don't be skeptical. The third is people become Google doctors. You know, you Google search things, you surf things on the internet, and with that little knowledge, you start imbibing all the negative, potential, remotely negative kind of consequences, and you think these medicines are going to lead you there. And this kind of a thought process happens because of the inbuilt negativity that you're suffering from. So you pick on the most negative and you know, kind of absorb it, and you feel you will have that. We call it as a nocebo effect. It's like you already have side effects before beginning the medication. So it is done judiciously, they are tailored as per the need of an individual. And when you come to children, you see disorders like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So there are children who are noisy in classrooms. We do tie-ups with many schools and educational institutes where we try to sensitize teachers to make them aware. We try to sensitize parents, like you talked about. What are the resilience factors? How to build resilience? It begins from the family environment. Conflict is everywhere in every environment. How it is resolved through a dialogue, how we negotiate and sail through it, how we absorb the experience and reflect. These are things which help you improve your coping abilities so that you don't become a victim of circumstances. You begin to learn not to victimize yourself in your thought processes. So children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are noisy in the classrooms. They'll kind of miss on their rubbers, their pencils every other day. They'll be labeled as careless, noisy, naughty in class. They will just move around. They'll disturb the entire class, and they become at times the sore of the eye of the teacher. And that disturbs their self-esteem. So not only does the child then suffer only from attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the child becomes comorbidly depressed, comorbidly anxious. And when you have those kind of symptoms, then you are basically losing on your childhood playful years. So timely intervention, there are medications for that. At times there are specific medicines which are recommended as per the psychiatrist, which have to be given in a timely manner. Environmental manipulation also helps at that point of time. Support systems have to be in place. And I really liked today's platform, the way you have brought in people working in different fields, be it Shikha ji from the police sector, or be it the Roshni organization and Ushashree working so hard on it, or whether it is this Dr. Smita Sharma working towards positive psychology. I mean, it's beautiful, Usha Raniji, it's beautiful. I mean, I don't have words to describe this platform, but the way you have brought it forward, I think this coordinated approach, this interlink within the different segments of society would ultimately have reach out potential. And this is what needs to be done. It's not a one-time effort. It is something which has to be consistent. It has to be in multiple domains and directions, and it has to be a concerted effort of unity. And that brings me to the point of we over me. It is very important. You know, where most of the psychiatric problems begin, when we narrow down our me. And that me is only about instinctual satisfaction at the cost of another person. That me is dangerous. If we involve ourselves in that we feeling, like Smita ji also talked about, that is very important. That is very important. And that is something that is nurtured from day one when a child is born. How he or she sees the environment around, how the child builds the relationship with the mother, the first nurturing figure, and how the child builds relationship with himself or herself. And that percolates into your relationships with the people around your family, and then perhaps the world at large, the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam concept that we talk about. So different domains we need to understand, we need to pick. And then we also have disorders wherein there is learning disability. Movie Tare Zameen Par did a good task in terms of, reaching out to the masses to be able to bring in this little message that the child who writes B instead of D, a child who makes many spelling mistakes, a child who's very good when it comes to verbal dialogue, but fails miserably when it comes to writing skills and in terms of graphics used, is suffering from perhaps dyslexia or dysgraphia or dyscalculia because the child cannot do good mathematics. Now, those are things which are properly assessed. So when we work in the psychiatric setups or psychological setups, we work in tandem where we have a team of psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers. We try to tie up with educational institutes, with public sector, with organizations, with the corporate, because stress is everywhere. And people in stress would reach maybe the judiciary, would reach perhaps the police system. And those are also points where they need that approach of listening, understanding, sensitively handling, which I think Shikha ji is wonderfully doing in her domain and field of expertise. Now, those are things that we need to percolate till the grassroots level so that people reach out and get the kind of care that they truly require at that point of time. There are n number of psychiatric problems, and I see most of the disharmony in the environment created by disharmony within yourself. So improve the relationship with your own self is the message, through positive dialogue with your own self, through positive self-affirmations, and also by inculcating a sense of gratitude We just think that we pay and we buy services. We go and we experience things and our work is done. But the person behind stage, the person backstage, the person who brings those comforts to you, we must have this thought of gratitude in our head. And the moment we have positive feelings of gratitude and empathy, I tell you, most of the battle is won, because that then surfaces at each level of contact and human intervention. And words, behavior, and emotions can heal. And the same, if done in a wrong way, can cause n number of damage, which I can't enumerate. So those are things which need to be worked on. Even when people come with marital discord, I've seen people reaching the brink of suicide because of marital discord, irrespective of the gender. We have to be sensitive. We have to be sensible. We need to understand whether there's underlying personality disorder in a spouse, whether there's underlying delusion of infidelity in the spouse, whether there's underlying alcoholism or drugs of abuse in the spouse, whether there's underlying schizophrenia, where the person is suspicious and feels being monitored all the time, or is there some kind of other problem which lies unaddressed, or some need which lies unfulfilled that needs to be resolved and sorted. Consistent approach, positive approach will take us all a long way. And I'm sure with this positive hope in mind, we would be able to, and we should be able to do a good task. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samir. Your enthusiasm and knowledge on the subject is deeply appreciated. And with that, I just want to say thank you to all of the panelists. While all of you have been fighting to bring awareness and change to mental health for many years, to me it's heartening to see that substantial and tangible changes are happening. Ms. Goel, you noted that there's been an increase in reporting of domestic violence and suffering, suggesting the community efforts to reduce stigma and reach out is working. And Dr. Sharma noted that more investments are being made in training up counselors and supporting staff to close the current gap in treatment. Ushashree shared with us the diversity of Roshni's on-the-ground programs, as well as the increased volume of helpline calls, which are all the more important in these times of COVID and the need to social distance. And finally, Dr. Samir, I think you've empowered all of us with the knowledge of what to look for in our loved ones to ensure they get the help they need. And in your last share, I think really showed that so many symptoms are on a spectrum. While there are some cases, like you mentioned, wearing your clothes in the bath, that many of us might think, oh, that's not me. I think so many of the things you mentioned are common to all of us. And it's really just a matter of, do they get exacerbated or can you manage them early on? And just accepting that people experience things differently. So thank you for that. So once again, thank you, all of you, for doing what you do and sharing the knowledge with us so that we can play an active role in changing this narrative on mental health. So I realize we've run over time, but some of our speakers are willing to stay a few moments longer for Q&A. So if you have a question, please just enter it in the chat. And we'll start with the first question from former chairperson, Mrs. Rekha Lahoti, to ask a question to Mrs. Goel.
Hi everyone. It was a lovely session. And as my dear friend Dr. Smita said, mental immunity. So this question is to you, Shikha. So you suffered from COVID. I would like to ask you, how did you cope up with your mental immunity? Why don't you share your thoughts on that?
Hi, Rekha. Nice to see you. I mean, it is now almost known all over Hyderabad that I suffered from COVID, despite I may not be wanting to. But that is one time where which Dr. Samir was talking about Googling. So one thing which I really did was not Google at all on COVID since as soon as I tested positive. So to be very frank, because of the huge exposure which we have in the police, I mean, from the day the lockdown has been declared, we've literally been on the roads, and there is despite whatever precautions are said, there was definitely a large scope of getting infected, and ultimately I got infected. But yes, I would agree that it gave me a few anxious moments when I discovered I was positive, and a little more of them when my husband also tested positive. So it was a little anxious moments it did give me. But then, to talk about positivity, mental positivity is what was the real crux at that time. And therefore, the first thing was not to Google anything about COVID. In fact, except knowing that what is happening in Hyderabad, because I was working from home and we had to keep a tab. I, in fact, didn't even see what was the COVID situation in the country. I stopped watching that news also, only keeping abreast with what was happening in Hyderabad. A second thing was definitely to keep yourself mentally engaged. So one was, since I was working from home, so at least part of your time, because when we were in complete isolation, in fact, we maintained isolation from each other, my husband and myself also, even though both of us were positive. So we were staying absolutely in our own rooms. So to keep yourself mentally engaged is probably was the biggest, the biggest factor and the biggest thing which need to be done. So one, I was working from home. Secondly, I decided that, I need to keep myself engaged and do activities which you like. I think one of the panelists talked about, doing something which, gives you pleasure, and something at which time you relieve all your stress. So what I did was that I caught up on all the movies and the TV shows which I have missed all this while because of my work schedules. So I was like looking at, I got hooked on to a number of TV shows and listening to music. And then, I've chatted up with my friends with whom I have not talked for more than 10 years also. So now with WhatsApp, video calls, and obviously then family anyway, we're chatting up, playing online games with the children. So the idea was to keep yourself mentally engaged. And I think that is the key. Remaining is okay, you take medical advice and take whatever medicines are prescribed. But yes, not getting paranoid about the entire issue is probably was the crux. And I guess that is what I learned. I realized in this and certain situations, I have realized that, it is definitely the mind which controls your body. And if you have this positivity and if you can control your mind and your thoughts, then you can do a lot of things and you can come out of a lot of things.
Fabulous, Shikha, fabulous. Thank you so much. Sorry for the trouble to call you back. Sorry.
Thank you so much for your question. Next, I'll pass it on to Mrs. Sona Chatwani, also past chairperson of FLO, who has a question for Dr. Sharma.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this has been an insightful conversation. Congratulations all. Thanks, Usha, for bringing this to the forum. Both my questions have got partially answered. But my question is to Smita. Smita, how are you? Long time. Is it right to start addressing a concern with someone with MH approaches us? Should it not be always routed through the professionals as medications may be required? Like in the Indian scenario, we all seems to be expert and, pitching in. At what stage we need to, get them to see, a professional?
Okay. So as very, very rightly put by you, Sona, that we are part of that culture and community that we are very proud of, that we seem to be available to support and advise, as much as possible. Now the area that you are trying to draw our attention on is in terms to when the right person needs to step in. If I have to correlate to a physical concern, I think that I would be able to answer your question more appropriately. Even if it's a common cold and we live with a common cold for a day or two, and after the third day when the discomfort comes in a way of functioning in our productive best self, we do reach out to the doctor. Because we feel that it's hampering our day-to-day work, our productivity, what we wish to do. So we do reach out. In the similar fashion, how Dr. Sameer was mentioning earlier, that with respect to depression, if I'm just picking out one of the things, or maybe anxiety, as long as you are managing it in terms of what you think and feel about it, and what you can do, or what kind of little advice that's coming from your loved ones, and that's helping you to go ahead with your day-to-day work. It's helping you, or you are trying to manage it, to stay productive and on go, it is fine. But the moment you realize that this is not happening, this is definitely coming as a strong roadblock. It's a strong red flag to not wait for too long. We end up saying that, I do a lot of, stuff with young adults in college institutes and all of that. And I end up saying, don't even wait for a week. If you find yourself seeking some kind of a comfort, in a dark room in your hostel, and you don't feel like getting up, just even after the third day, step out and reach out to us. So as soon as you feel that it's hampering your day-to-day functionality, not in terms of action, but in terms of your thoughts also. If you feel you're getting caged in some kind of dominant, persistent, dysfunctional, consuming thought process, it's time to address it as early as possible.
Thanks, Smita.
Most welcome.
So much. Next, we'll pass it over to Nanda Rao, who has a question for Mrs. Ushashree.
My question to you is, how far have we come with regard to awareness regarding mental health, and how can we increase this awareness? Is it good to start early, like in schools, etc.?
Yeah, that's very true, Nanda. The earlier you start, it's better, because if you start at school level, a person, a student, a child will understand the importance of mental health. Otherwise, he'll grow up thinking that it's something is wrong with him, happening with him. Is it abnormal the way the changes are, I'm having these changes, all that he'll grow with all those apprehensions. So as a child, if we can teach him the mental health issues, these are the things you may face as you grow up, both physical changes also. Sometimes we get calls from adolescents, they are not aware of they are seeing some changes in their thinking process, both physically and mentally, but they are hesitant to ask anyone, so they ask, teenagers call and ask, these are the bodily changes we are seeing, are they normal? They don't want to approach their parents, friends, they feel very delicate, it's a sensitive issue for them. So we get such calls also. So if we can, at school level itself, if we can educate what are the changes a child can see as they're growing up, both physically and mentally, even their thought process will change along with the age. So if you can inculcate that knowledge from school level, it goes a long way in his life. Throughout his life, he'll be benefited. Did I answer your question, Nanda?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Ushashree.
Much. We'll take, if you have any questions, put it in the chat box. Else we have one final question, which Ms. Lalita George will ask of Dr. Sameer.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. And thank you for the very engaging and enlightening session. My question is to Dr. Sameer. How can I tell whether I or somebody else is suffering from a mental health problem?
I think this is a very relevant question that you've posed. And like I said initially, in the initial part of the conversation also, that if it is causing significant distress, if it is causing disharmony within and in your relationships, and if it is making you feel dysfunctional, you ought to do certain things, there are certain roles and responsibilities which you are falling short of, given your age and stage that is expected out of you. Or if it is leading to a point where you feel that you could be a danger to yourself, you could harm yourself, or perhaps you have threatening thoughts and you have thoughts where you feel like taking it out on others. So if that is the kind of situation, then perhaps we need to reach out quicker. That becomes very, very important. What also becomes important, and if I just club in the previous questions which were asked to the other panelists, I was just wondering, there's this difference between a structure and a concept. So when it comes to teaching, when it comes to, educational institutes, what we are gearing, the students and others are towards perhaps a career and to reach a destination point, and career for the sake of survival, or perhaps the comfort or the luxury. So it could be a spectrum there. But what we are losing on is the concept of journey. Life is about a journey. It's a process. No life is free of stress, nor can it be possible. That kind of a world cannot be imagined. It will be an ideal world. We all want to be stress-free, but a lot depends on one's own ability to resolve issues, your own ability to minimize the negatives and look and selectively extract the positives which are happening simultaneously in your life. When you're losing that eye and you are getting too much into externalization, or your behavior is becoming a threat to yourself or others, so for the family, they need to just kind of make a red alarm there and reach out as quick as possible. And what's the harm in reaching out to a professional? We reach out to a doctor. That doesn't mean the doctor is going to prescribe medication at the drop of the hat. We also, as parents, as individuals, as responsible individuals, first try to assess whether really and the right kind, the person really requires the medication, or things could be sorted with a dialogue and little environmental change and support. So I think those are things which are important. Like Dr. Smita rightly said, we should not wait. Why should we wait for these issues to be addressed? And it's high time that we address them. We understand things are going out of hand. So if you're feeling distressed, if there's dysfunction, if there's a disorder, there's a dis-ease, you're not at ease with yourself. That's where dis-ease word comes from. If there's a disorder, things are not in order, disorder. If there is some disharmony, either in relationships or issues, now the whole world can't go wrong. It's also about the adaptability quotient. If you're not able to adapt, you might be having some personality issues which need to be sorted, resolved, and those personality issues stem from childhood. So even before school, I think the sensitization should begin at a parental level. I, before becoming a parent, should be aware of my responsibilities and my own behavior. Once I start taking onus of that, I become a role model for my child to follow. The child then sees, okay, there's a conflict at home. This is how my parents sit across the table and in a very decent way resolve and try to make an effort to resolve. They could still agree to disagree on certain issues, but egos and issues don't become larger than relationships.
Thank you so much.
Timely help required.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank
you, Dr. Samir and Lalita, for your question. We have one final question for you, Dr. Samir, from Mahati.
Hi, Dr. Samir. It was a great session, and it was lovely to hear your insights on mental health from a technical perspective. My question to you is, what is the difference between depression and stress? Many a times, there's a lot of confusion. Not only my generation, they use these words interchangeably. Stress, depression turns out to be similar. I'm stressed, I'm depressed. So could you throw some light on what you think basis your experience?
Let me define it for you. Now, stress is a broad term. It's a broad word, right? It's a big word.
Yes.
Stress could mean a little daily hassle, any change, a little change in the environment, a change in position, a change in role, anything which brings about a little change biologically or environmentally is a potential stress, right? And then there's this concept of coping with stress. So whenever we talk about stress, stress is like a challenging situation. So that stress can percolate into depression, may not percolate into depression. Now, what is the interface between stress and normalcy, or perhaps an abnormalcy, if I may use that term? There's a component of stress which is considered as good. So if you are facing examination, we all know we all face examinations, and our ability to absorb, our ability to remember, our ability to memorize at times becomes very good at the nth hour. And we always wonder that we should have 1 day extra. And if we pray and we want that 1 hour or 1 day extra for us to be able to perhaps grasp all that we couldn't grasp in the last 1 year. So many times stress also improves your ability to grasp, your ability to perform, and your ability to take it as an opportunity to evolve. So what we develop as a part of stress management within ourselves is a strength to cope, or our coping abilities. Now that point of stress is very good. That level of stress is very good. That phase of stress is good because it is helping you develop your own self, improvise your own self, work faster with the ability to grasp much better. So you are able to deal with that situation and you are able to rise up to the optimum potential that you possess. The best of works in the field have come up during the phase when the person was quite stressed. So it depends how you use that stress into adaptive coping. That part of adaptive coping that makes that stress help you evolve, help you improvise, help you innovate, help you invent is called as eustress. But the moment it becomes distressing, the moment it leads to danger, the moment it becomes dysfunctional, the moment it creates disharmony, the moment it robs you of your sleep, it robs you of your appetite, the moment it disturbs, and you start having bodily symptoms. People at times have unexplained body aches and pains, which we call as somatic anxiety or somatization. So those symptoms, if they are happening, you're having cold, clammy extremities, this is becoming a distressing point, and perhaps that's the point which could percolate into depression because you're not able to resolve it. What is happening biologically is that there's an HPA axis, hypothalamo-pituitary-adrenal axis, that is getting activated. You're releasing unnecessary adrenaline into your system. You are making a mountain out of a mole within yourself. And in that haze and that maze, you're becoming all the more distressed and dysfunctional, leading on to a phase of depression where you're running low in serotonin. Simple sleep hygiene, trying to control yourself and trying to remind yourself this situation too shall pass. Let me see and other ways of resolving it. Problem-solving approach rather than just thinking about the problem constantly. Problem-solving approach helps. Logical use of mind helps rather than getting driven by emotions. We are all emotional beings. We all need to be emotional to be humane. But it's like a stream, a flow of river, which quenches the thirst. It follows a path. But the moment there's a flood of emotions, then obviously it is something which becomes dangerous and difficult to handle. So we should prevent that kind of a level happening. But maintain that humanity and maintain that positive emotional flow that is required.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samir. So I'll maybe wrap our Q&A with the final question, which I think is a good transition point, getting to the topic of what can we all do on this call to play a role in this conversation. So Ushashree, Swarna had a question of what is the eligibility criteria to become a volunteer at Roshni?
Oh, okay, thank you, Swarna, for the question. Yeah, we all need volunteers. So this is a purely voluntary organization. It runs on volunteers' help. So we have about 70 volunteers right now, but as the demand is increasing, if we have enough volunteers, we can go out more and create awareness on our outreach programs, and we can extend our working hours also. So to become a volunteer, usually whenever there is a need for volunteers, we advertise in print and social media. And people who are interested, they can call us and give their details. Usually we take between the age group of 30 to 60 is the maximum limit. And we conduct a group discussion. We invite all the interested people to our center and explain what that's expected from them. That is in terms of number of hours they need to dedicate, and what are their duties, what is their role as a volunteer. We explain all the details to them. Then if they are interested, they'll be called for interviews. There is a 3-level interview process through which we assess his capabilities or interest, what is their journey in their life, whether they'll be able to cope with the types of calls we get. Sometimes we get very intense calls, but we all started like that. We were all, normal people. But once you pass through all these interviews, then there will be training. This will be done for 6 days during the weekends, consecutive weekends. So that is the crux of the matter. When you go through this training, that transforms you from a layman to you become a befriender. You gain so much of knowledge is given, how to talk to a person, how to listen to the caller when a person visits the center, how to, the body language, the way you project yourself, how to focus. Because once you take a call or when you're sitting with a person, you just forget everything about your thoughts, your opinions, your beliefs. You're just listen to the person with an open mind, no judgments, no personal beliefs. So then only you can befriend a person and you will be able to help the person in the right way. So all this is given. And how to identify mental illnesses, mental disorders. While speaking or while listening to the caller itself, you will, because of this training, you will be able to identify a person with mental illnesses, which they need help. They themselves may not realize, like some OCDs, like severe anxiety disorders. The person may not realize that they have these problems. But when they speak to us, we will be able to identify and give timely help and guide them in a proper way. All this is done during the training session. That is very, very important. So after the training, then you will be put to probation. There is a probation period of a few months where you don't take calls, you don't take visitors, but you just observe other volunteers, how they are taking. You'll be sitting with them when they are taking calls and when they are taking, when they're speaking to the callers. So you just observe and grasp the information. Now after probation, you are allowed to take calls. This is the usual training process. At the end of the training, once you work as a volunteer, you see a lot of difference in your own perspective also. Not only you are helping others, the perspective towards your life itself changes. That is the change I found in myself. I joined in 2009, but over a period of time, I am a different person. Earlier, I used to think my focus was only on what I lack in my life, but now I know. I started appreciating what I have. The sense of gratitude came to me. Like that, your perspective towards your life and towards others, you will be a transformed person. Okay? You need not believe me. Once you join as a volunteer, you yourself will experience all this. Thank you, Sharma, for asking this question.
Thank you so much, Ushashree. I'll echo, I've been a crisis counselor for many years, and it's a very rewarding experience. So I'd highly recommend it to anyone on this call, and it seems like you'd have great training with Mrs. Ushashree. So thank you again to all of the speakers for staying with us for this long, for sharing what you do, and to all of the participants for joining in on the conversation. I will pass it over to Ushashree now to wrap up.
Thank you, Nitya. What an insightful discussion that was. I'm sure we are all going back much better informed than when we arrived here. And this will really help us be in a better position to make a difference. Here we asked a host of people for their views on the subject, and what we heard from you just now matches their thoughts perfectly. Let's hear what they have to say. The video, please.
Namaste. Did you know that the average suicide rate in India is 10.9 for every 1 lakh people? And that the majority of people who commit suicide are below 44 years of age. FLO Hyderabad is associating with Roshni NGO to help create a deeper understanding of mental depression, to amplify the reach of information and provide the necessary support and access to mental health services for the greater good of our society. Each of us can play a role to reach out. So, do reach out. There's always somebody.
Anxiety, depression have become common terms now, and yet there is a huge gap between the way mental health and physical health are understood and approached. FLO Hyderabad is launching a year-long campaign that will touch upon the various facets of mental illness, the experiences of those who suffer from it, the route to recovery, the ways society can be supportive, and the ways in which those suffering can get help. We are supported in this endeavor by Roshni NGO, for which we are grateful to them.
Mental health, as we all know, has an impact on all aspects of our lives. It affects our personal and professional lives immensely. So we all need to break the stigma attached to it. Roshni is glad to collaborate with FLO Hyderabad chapter for this year-long campaign called Reach Out. Main goal is to spread the message of positive mental health and raise awareness about mental health issues. We hope to reach out to many more people through this campaign.
COVID has left us with many anxieties. There are so many questions, so many doubts, but unfortunately no one seems to have all the answers. Difficulty seems to be getting better of some people, but do not lose hope. FICCI FLO and Roshni Trust have set up professional counseling facilities. Reach out, there is always somebody.
When we talk about mental health, the first and foremost thing to understand is that we need to destigmatize mental health disorders. We need to understand that mental illness is curable, and all it needs is that one needs to come out of the closet and seek help. Therefore, reach out, there's always somebody.
Millions of people are affected by mental illness. The stigma associated with any form of mental illness continues to exist. These are difficult times, and I urge you to take care of your mind and your body. Get help and talk to your loved ones. Thanks to FICCI FLO and to Roshni NGO for this initiative. Reach out. There is always somebody.
So friends, let's not stigmatize or ignore psychiatric problems. Let's give mind its due importance, and let's join our hands towards this positive endeavor to prevent psychiatric problems and to reach out people suffering or families suffering with these problems in a timely and effective manner.
Mental Health Awareness Initiative is all about filling the gap in the mental health support system through awareness, acceptance, and action. By being aware of your emotional, psychological, and social well-being, you can improve how you think, feel, and act. Once aware of your mental health status, stay true to yourself and accept it. Prevention is better than cure. Timely action, appropriate intervention goes a long way in treating mental health issues.
There is nothing noble in suffering, and that there is nothing weak or shameful in asking for help. And the best way to look at mental health is that it is the physical illness of the brain that does not help one to cope up with the ordinary demands of life. I would like to congratulate FICCI FLO and Roshni for having come together with their core strengths. Roshni with its strength of counseling, and FICCI FLO through its 17 chapters across the country is trying to reach out to these people who are actually in need. And there is always one out there waiting for us, seeking our help. Reach out and save one.
In India, unfortunately, we think that mental health is about madness. It's not. Hundreds of thousands of people across the world suffer from mental health, from depression, from anxiety, but it's nothing to be ashamed of. Talk to people, it'll help. Go to professionals. Just as you go to a doctor if you have a stomachache. Go to a doctor, talk to a psychiatrist, talk to somebody who will listen. Talk, it will help, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Reach out, there's always someone.
We're human beings, we are meant to depend on each other, lean on each other, talk to each other, listen to each other, and help each other. We're not meant to be little isolated islands. So please, reach out. There's always, always, always somebody.
Captaincy and leadership, not only in my sport, but in any field, does involve high pressure and expectation from different lens. There will always be challenging times when you're on the field. Mental health is one which has been mistaken as a social stigma and taboo. Do not hesitate to reach out and express your emotions to close ones. Please reach out. There is always somebody.
Mental illness is looked upon as a big stigma in our society. And due to this, people who have this illness are afraid to reach out.
Mental health is something that we should talk about. It's not a taboo to feel sad. It's not bad to feel depressed. The most important thing is to share, and it's amazing how light you will feel when you actually do share, and how good it will make you feel. Share with your family, share with your siblings, share with your friends. And if you need professional help, then go and get that professional help. Reach out. There is always someone.
Saying I have a broken leg is easier than saying I have a broken heart. I am lost. I need help. It's so difficult. So let us fight this stigma. If a broken leg can be fixed, so can a broken heart. Suicide is not the solution. It just transfers the pain from one person to another person. So remember, there is always someone.
Your experience of life has a chemical basis. Right now you're feeling joyful. It's your chemistry on one level. You're feeling miserable. It's your chemistry. So yogic system has an elaborate system how we can create the right kind of chemistry. It's been well established by proper research. The endocannabinoid secretion in the body is significantly higher. That means you are always in a very pleasant state of experience. You are blissful by your own nature. This must happen to every human being.
Reach out. There is always somebody.
Remember to reach out. There's always somebody who can help you. Raise your face to the sun again.
Our profuse thanks to each one of them for obliging our request and sharing their thoughts with us. Over to Priya.
Thank you, Usha. So thank you, ladies. Thank you, Dr. Sameer. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us for so long. What we have understood is that we can all make the change happen, one gesture, one person, one day at a time. I'll now hand you over to Umachi Gurupati, our Senior Vice Chairperson, for the vote of thanks.
A very good afternoon, all. That's a very informative and insightful session. Thank you so much. There is so much to take home today. You don't have to struggle in silence. There is always somebody. Mental health needs a great deal of attention, especially at the present situation. It needs to be faced and dealt with as a top priority. Shikha, Goel, thank you so much for joining us today and explaining us what the Hyderabad police is doing for the mental health and also for the women through Bharosa scheme. And also, I really appreciate your encouraging words to remove the social stigma against COVID-19 and your message to remain strong and positive and mentally engaged is very motivational and helpful. Thank you so much. Dr. Sameer Malhotra, thank you for all the compassionate professional suggestions, advices, and guidance given today. You explained, self-victimization and especially importance of listening. There is so much to take home. Thank you for joining us today. Smita, thank you so much for your presence and sharing your ideas and explaining about PEMA, the positive emotions. Ushashree, appreciate the kind support extended to many through your organization. Yes, one has to take the responsibility of one's health, which is so true. Thank you so much for joining us. Nitya, you have navigated the program in a very professional way. Thank you. I thank all who participated in the anthem and
those who shared the encouraging words with us regarding mental health today. I congratulate and appreciate all the committee members who put a lot of effort in bringing out this program and the anthem. Thank you, IT team, for all the support. Our gratitude to all the sponsors, Laurus Labs, Arvindo Pharma, Polemon Group, our goal partners, and branding partners, RBC Worldwide, and gifting partners, Pushpam Publications. I thank all our past chairs who are always very supportive in whatever program we take up, members of the chapter and fellow flow members from all the chapters, media, and all the viewers for joining us today. Before I close, I'd like to recap the take home from today's conversation. What mental health needs is more sunlight, more candor, and unashamed conversation. Please remember, someone may need our support, guidance, or help. Let's be aware of that and let us extend that support needed. Stay safe and stay at peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Uma. On behalf of Chairperson Usharani Manne and the committee, I thank you all once again for joining us in this much needed conversation. Stay tuned for more such meaningful interactions and initiatives from your own Flow Hyderabad. Until then, stay fit, stay put, stay safe. Thank you.